Ah, bugger. I just thought to myself, have I done everything I want before starting? And it's like, no, actually, that sound in the background, that's the sound of the, well, I've got an air fryer going, heating up some beef. I fancy making a beef and cheese sandwich. Oh, well, let's make it a short stream then, shall we? A short stream, if we will. Yes. So, as you may be aware if you're watching this, I really like Dyson Sphere program. And they did an update to it recently saying that, oh look, wouldn't it be nice if you had some controls over routes or routes? And routes as in what a tree puts down, and routes as in the way to go, they sound the same. I think that's why some people say route. Yeah, that makes sense, because if an army is in route, they're taking a route off the battlefield. Yeah, it's probably route for that reason. So anyway, I've not even bothered with the routing behaviour. And here I am on the system of interdimensional lizard. We haven't done anything here. And as you can see, lots of traffic going to and from the laboratory system. That makes sense because it's demanding plenty of stuff. The alphabet cat system, that was the one we started off in, and if you look, we got some people, I say people, automated ships with no people in it. They're going down to the gas giant to stock up on hydrogen or deuterium. And we got some stuff here. Not much, mind you. All that's left is iron ore and coal. Oh, and some crude oil. Likewise, there's some stuff happening here. I think it was just a mining facility. As you can see, most of that's being mined now. And same here. So I thought to myself, well, we got pretty much everything. We have a lab. And I can't remember on one of these, but it's probably this one. So you see there's a lot of traffic going to and from it. There's a forge, and there's also another planet making foundations in that star system. But if I go to it, we'll be able to see what's going on, won't we? So I've got a planet called here Eternal Fire. What if I go to that one first? Why have I got a planet called Eternal Fire on the Gobi Desert? So it's still loading. These loading things, normally you don't see the loading screen because when you walk from one place to another. But Eternal Fire is... Oh, well, we can set you for... actually, maybe not. We'll demand that in. So they're demanding... Oh, right, okay. This was the facility that produces excess purple science. That's what we're doing here. That's why there's a big demand. So all of this is to make that. Okay, yeah. And so if I look at this, yeah, it's requesting foundation. So, oh, that's a good point actually. If I go and get that, put it there, and it's still picking up loads of foundation, maybe we'll see where they're coming from. Like, there's a pulse line there, so that's probably coming from Zeta Normae. I'll give that another name in a bit. But for now, foundations here. Place the foundation, like so. And there, we got a bit more of a paved planet. Not necessary. Only really need it for bridging the gaps in bits of water which are getting in the way of a factory. But I think it's a nice thing to have. So, that's why there's a lot of traffic here. There's demand for purple science. So, if I go to Zeta Normae, and we see there's a lot of back and forth here. That's right. So if I go here, we'll probably see the forge, or we'll see the other thing that's here, which I don't remember. I'll have to wait for it to load. Yep, this is the forge planet, so I'm going to call this star system Forge. There we are. And it's mostly demand for steel and, oh, there's a bit of a demand for glass. I mean, that's why they're busy flickering. They're all getting bits of glass. Afternoon, interdimensional lizard. We'll go to the star system with your namesake in a bit. It's only going to be a short one, because I've got food cooking, and I just realised that I was going to go out and do some roadworthiness checks on my car. I've given it a screen wash, I've checked the oil, but I want to check tyre pressures. And why do they keep going back and forth with this planet? Well, the reason they keep going back and forth with this planet is because, as you can see here, I have a row of factories that are all building foundation. Very good. So anyway, that's why there's a lot of traffic to and from in this star system. Now let's go to... there's Alphabet Cat. Where's the other? This is the one. Right, I'll set the indicator, and instead of just using the fast travel, I'll warp to it. I think I've reached a conclusion as an experiment that making a factory with hundreds of thousands of moving components, doesn't matter how you do it, and I've tried to do it as efficiently as possible. Unfortunately, it's not going to work, because it needs either more optimization, or I need to wait for a new era in of computing, so that we can support even more complicated scenarios. But yeah, let's have a bit of Conan. I think last he boarded a ship and was negotiating passage to somewhere else, and he's got a woman he's training to use a sword.
It's a mark of pride to her, and a spur. Akiva dropped down beside him, eyeing Yazbek with respect. She learns. Can you teach so well, and to a woman there is need of you in the army to train the many recruits we take of late. She has no ideas of swordplay to unlearn, Conan replied. Also, she does exactly as I say. Exactly. Akiva laughed, lifting an eyebrow. At the look on Conan's face, he pulled his countenance into an expression of exaggerated blandness. Does your stomach still trouble you? The youthful Sumerian asked hopefully. My head and my legs now ignore the pitching, Akiva replied with a fixed grin. Conan gave him a doubtful look.
Yeah, this is the star system with that.
Mukhtar has a keg of the ripest... No, thank you, Conan, the Turanian said in haste, a certain tautness around his mouth. As though eager to change the subject, he added, I have not noticed Bayan about today.
Oh, so I already have a system called Interdimensional Lizard.
The Sumerian's mouth tightened. I overheard him discussing his plans for Yazbek, and I spoke to him about it. In friendly fashion, I trust.
You know what? Out of curiosity...
would welcome an excuse to slit our throats. In friendly fashion, Conan agreed.
Let's just have it go. We'll just see how far we can go before it says, oh, you can't warp anymore.
She is of age with Zorel. A tasty morsel, that girl, Sharak said, sitting down on Conan's...
I'll save it there, and I'm just going to go check on my cooking.
But 20 years younger, I would take her from you, Sumerian. Yazbek's sword clanged on the deck, drawing all three men's eyes. She glared at them furiously. I am no trained ape or dancing bear that you three may squat like farmlouts and be entertained by me. She stalked away, then back to snatch up the Sika, her eyes daring them to speak as she did, and marched down the deck to disappear within her small tent before the mast. Your wench begins to develop a temper, Conan, Shark said, staring after her. Perhaps you have made a mistake in teaching her to use a weapon. Akiba nodded with mock gravity. She is no longer the shy and retiring maiden that once she was, Sumerian, thanks to you. Of course, I realize that she is no longer a maiden at all, also thanks to you. But at least you could gentle her before she begins challenging us all to mortal combat. How can you talk so, Conan protested. But moments gone, you likened her to your own daughter. Aye, Akiba said gravely, his laughter gone. I was much concerned with Zorel's virtue while she lived. I see things differently now. Now she is dead, I hope that she had what joy she could of her life. I have not touched her, Conan muttered reluctantly and bridled at their disbelieving stares. I rescued her. She's innocent and alone, with none to protect her but me. Needless mercies. As the last huntsman to pen a gazelle fawn stayed there for sport. Shark hooted with laughter. The tiger and the gazelle. But which of you is which? Which hunter, which prey?
So how far can we go?
As you marked, Sumerian. 'Tis true, Akiba said. He essayed a
Well, then mind you,
smile.
now that I'm far away from
Girl
all
is
of it,
among those aboard this vessel who think
this
her
seems
your
to be the
wench.
way to
Andrew's nine
improve the
hells you think
simulations,
you're a
just
holy
to
man.
get far away.
I may let the pair of you swim the rest of the way, Conan growled. I tell you. His words trailed off as Mukhtar loomed over the three men. The blue-necked man tugged at his beard, spread fan shaped across his chest, and eyed Conan with speculation. We are followed, he said finally. A galley. Conan rose smoothly to his feet and strode to the stern, Akiba and Shark scrambling in his wake. Mukhtar followed more slowly. I see nothing but water, the Turanian sergeant complained, shading his eyes. Shark muttered agreement, squinting furiously. Conan saw the follower, though, seeming no more than a chip on the water in the distance, but with the faint sweep of motion at its sides that told of long oars straining for speed. Pirates? Conan asked. Although there were many such on the Vilayet Sea, he did not truly believe those who followed were numbered among them. Mukhtar shrugged. Perhaps. He did not sound as if he believed it either. What else could they be? Akiba demanded. Mukhtar glanced sideways at Conan, but did not speak. I still see nothing, Sharok put in. How soon before they come up on
How
us?
can I be
Conan
producing so few yet consuming so much? How does that work?
He looked at the great green water, its long swells feathering whitely in the wind, then peered at the sky, where pale gray clouds were layered against the afternoon blue. We may have a storm before, though. The Vilayet is a treacherous bitch. The Sumerian's eyes locked on the approaching ship, one huge fist thumping the rail as he thought. How to fight the battle that must come and win. How? If we have a storm, the old astrologer said, then we will hide from them in it. If it comes, Conan told him. I have counted their oarstroke, Mukhtar said abruptly, and they will kill slaves if they do not slacken it. Yet I do not believe they will. No one cares enough about Hyrcanians to chase them with such vigor. And Foam Dancer is a small ship, not a drum loaded to the gunwales with ivory and spices. It must be you three, or the wench. Have you the crown of Turan hidden in your bales? Is your jade a princess stolen from her father? Why do they follow so? We are traders, Conan said levelly, and you have been paid to carry us to Hyrcania and back to Turan. I've got no coin for the last. You will get your gold, unless you let
Let's
pirates
increase
take
the
our
drive
trade goods
speed.
and your ship. Then all you'll receive is a slaver's manacles, and you survive. Motioning the others to follow, the big Sumerian left Mukhtar muttering into his beard and peering at the ship
2.45
behind.
light years a second.
In the waist of the ship, Conan took a place by the rail, where he too could watch the galley. It seemed larger now. Tamur joined them. It follows us, Conan said quietly. But Al-Sham, the Hyrcanian, snarled at the same instant that Akiba said, Jandar. Sharok shook his staff at the galley with surprising fierceness. Let him send
Let's
his
rename
demons.
this
I am
one
ready
to...
for them. Tamur's dark eyes shone. This time we will carve him as a haunch of beef if he has 1,000 demons.
There we go.
And met Akiba's gaze. It seemed more likely that those on Foam Dancer would be meat on a spit. How many men does such a vessel carry, the Turanian asked. I know little of naval matters. Conan's own knowledge of the sea was limited to his short time with the smugglers in Sultanapur. But he had been pursued by such vessels before.
Let's go
There are
back.
2 banks of oars to a side, but the oar slaves will not be used to fight. A vessel of that size might carry 5 score besides the crew.
Out of curiosity, if I give myself
Only by the rigging lines
some of
humming
that
in the
fuel,
rising wind.
and
Then
then
Sharok said hollowly,
the next one would be hydrogen fuel cell,
This
and
adventure
those.
begins to seem ill-suited for a man of my years. By the one father I shall die happy, Tamur said, and I know Al-Sham goes with me into the long night. Akiba shook his head bleakly.
Oh, I know what I was going to build there. Yes, I'm going to test a blueprint for a mole.
But at least we shall find blood enough to pay our ferryman's fee, Sumerian? It will be a glorious fight in which to die, Tamur agreed. I do not intend to die yet, the Sumerian said grimly. The storm, Sharok said, his words holding a new excitement. The storm will hide us. The clouds were thicker now and darker, obscuring the lowering sun. Mayhap, Conan replied, but we will not depend on that. The god of the icy peaks and wind-ravaged crags of Conan's Sumerian homeland was Crom, dark lord of the mound, who gave a man life and will and nothing more. It was given to each man to carry his own fate in his hands, and his heart and his head. Conan strode aft to Mukhtar, who still stood
Almost
gazing at the
back.
galley. The bronze glint of its ram could be seen plainly now, knifing through grey swells.
Warp engine activated.
Will they reach us before night falls? Conan asked the
Warp
captain.
engine deactivated.
Or before the storm breaks? The storm may never break, Mukhtar muttered. On the villa yet, lightning may come from a sky where the sun was bright an instant before, or clouds may darken for days, then lift without a drop of rain. Do you lose me, my ship, Sumerian, I'll see your corpse. It
Right,
was
so
in
let's
my
land on a
mind
planet.
You were a sea captain, Conan taunted, not an old woman wanting only to play with her grandchildren.
So the first thing we'll do,
Mukhtar's neck to speak in anger, and his face in purple,
and
then
do
went
that,
on.
and then do this,
Listen,
and that will hide all the veins on this planet.
for as
Next,
long as we are able, we must run before them. Then,
this one doesn't work.
spoke, the dark color slowly left Mukhtar's face. Once he blanched and tried to stop the Sumerian's flow of words, but Conan would not pause for the other's objections. He pressed on.
I'll save the game
and after
first.
a time, Mukhtar began to listen intently, then to nod. It may work, he said finally. By Dagon's golden tail, it may just work. See to your nomads, Sumerian. Whirling with more agility than would have seemed possible, the bulky captain roared, To me, you whoresome dogs! To me, and listen to how I'll save your worthless hide still another time! What in Mitra's name was that all about? Akiva asked when Conan was back at the rail. As Mukhtar's voice rose and fell in waves, haranguing the crew in the stern, Conan told his companions what he planned. A grin appeared on Sharok's thin face, and he broke into a little dance. We have them! We have them! What a grand adventure! Tamur's smile was wolfish. Whether we escape or
It uses
die, this
these,
will
which
be
I
a
find
thing to be told
interesting.
around the campfires. Come, Turanian, and show us if any remnant of Hyrcanian blood remains in you. With a wry shake of his head, Akiva followed Tamur to join the other nomads. It was done then, Conan thought. Nothing remained but Yazbet. Even as her name came into his head, she was there before him. Her soft round eyes caressed his face. "I heard," she said. "Where is my place in this?" "I will make you a place in the midst of the bales," he told her, "where you will be safe. From archers or slingers, at least. I will not hide." Her eyes flashed, suddenly no longer soft. "You've taught me much, but not to be a coward. You'll hide if I must bind you hand and foot. But if it comes to that, I promise you'll not sit without wincing for a 10-day. Give me your sword," he added abruptly. "My sword? No." She clutched the hilt protectively, but he snatched the blade from her and started down the deck.
So, for some reason, those parts are empty.
Tear-filled eyes seeming to fill her face.
Not empty.
In front of the mast, the ship's grindstone, where the crew sharpened axes and swords alike, was fastened securely to the planking. Working the foot treadle, Conan set the edge of the blunt sickle to the spinning stone. Sparks showered from the metal. With his free hand, he dripped oil from a clay jug onto the wheel. The heat must not grow too great, or the temper of the blade would be ruined. Yasbet scrubbed a hand across her cheek, damp with tears. "I thought that you meant to... that you... You are no woman warrior," he said gruffly, "not in these few days. But you may have need to defend yourself, and the worst comes." "Then you will not make me..." she began, but he quelled her with an icy glance. The blood of battle was rising in him, driving out what small softness he had within. When steel was bared, the slightest remnant of gentleness could slay the one who bore it. Fiery sparks fountained from steel that was no harder than him who sharpened it. 16. About Foam Dancer's deck, men rushed, readying the parts of Conan's plan. The clouds darkened above.
So all of these things have to be made available
before its time, and wind strummed the rigging like a lute. Yet no moisture fell on the deck save spume from waves shattering on the bow.
So this needs a lot
the distance. A deadly bronze
of support.
centipede skittering across the water, seemingly unimpeded by the rising waves through which Foam Dancer now labored, wallowing heavily from trough to trough. Foam Dancer seemed a sluggish water beetle waiting to die. "They busy themselves in the bows," Mukhtar bellowed suddenly. Conan finished tying the line around Yasbet's waist, where she lay between stacked bales, themselves lashed firmly to the deck. "You've no fear of being washed overboard now," he told her, "no matter how violent the storm becomes." "It's the catapult!" Mukhtar cried. Conan started to turn away, but Yasbet seized his hand, pressing her lips to his calloused palm.
Didn't need that. Never mind.
"I shall be waiting for you," she murmured, "when the battle is done." She tucked his hand lower, and he found his fingers inside her leather jerkin. A spotted breast nestled in his hand. With an oath, he pulled his hand free, though not without reluctance. "There is no time for that now," he said roughly. Did she not realize how difficult it was for him already, he wondered, protecting a wench he longed to ravish? "They prepare to fire!" Mukhtar shouted, and Conan put Yasbet from his mind. "Now!" the young Sumerian cried. "Cut!" In the stern, Mukhtar raced to the steering oar, roughly shoving aside the burly steersman to seize the thick wooden shaft himself. In the bow, two scruffy smugglers drew curved swords and chopped. Lines parted with loud snaps, and the bundles of extra sailcloth Conan had put over the side were loosed. The sleek vessel leaped forward, all but jumping from wave-top to wave-top. Almost beneath her stern, a stone fell, half a man weight of granite, raising a fountain that drenched Mukhtar. "Now, Mukhtar!" Conan shouted. Snatching an oilskin bag, he ran aft. "I said now! The rest of you watch the pots!" The deck was dotted with scores of covered
lots of spinners darting to
every corner of the ship.
and fro.
Some hissed as foaming water swirled around them and ran across the planking. Cursing at the top of his lungs,
But it needs everything.
The steersman's oar, its massive thickness bowing from the strain.
In which case, these support ones will have to provide it.
The crew dashed to run out long sweeps, stroking and backing desperately to aid the turn. This was the point that had made Mukhtar's face pale when Conan told him of it. Turned broadside to the line of waves, the vessel heeled over, further, further, till her rail lay nearly on the surface. Faces twisted with fear, the smugglers
So
worked
do
their
those
oars with
bits.
feverish intensity. Akiva, Sharok, and the Hyrcanians scrambled to keep the clay containers from toppling or washing over the side. For a froth-peaked gray mountain of water now rolled over the rail, till it seemed that men waded in shallows. Among those laboring men, Conan's eyes suddenly lit on Yazbek, free of her bonds, struggling among the rest of the pots. His curses were borne away by the wind, and there was no time to do anything about her. Sluggishly but certainly, Foam Dancer's bow came into the waves, and the vessel lifted. She did not ride easily, as she had before. There was likely water enough below decks to float a launch, but still she crested that
So
first
next
wave and
up,
raced on, back toward the galley.
these
On
four
the edge,
items,
the
right.
catapult arm stood upright. If another stone had been launched, the splash of its fall had been lost in the rough seas. On the galley, seeing their intended prey turn back on them, men raced about like ants in a crushed anthill. But not so many men as Conan had feared, unless they kept others below. Most of those he could make out wore the twinned queues of sailors. "We've lost half the pots," Akiva shouted over the howling wind. "Gone into the sea." "Then ready what we have," Conan bellowed back,
surprised
"in full
about that.
haste." The Hyrcanians took up oilskin
Don't have
sacks
grating
like
crystals.
that Conan carried. Those on the other ship,
Why
apparently
is
believing
that?
their quarry intended to come to grips, have now provided themselves with weapons. Swords, spears, and axes bristled along the
Oh yeah, I
galley's
don't
rail.
have any of
In
those.
bow, men labored to winch down the catapult's arm for another shot, but too late, Conan knew. Foam
Annihilation
Dancer was now
constraint
too
spear.
close. Undoing the strings that held the mouth of his sack, Conan drew out its dry contents. A quiver of arrows, each with rags tied behind the head,
Yeah.
and a short recurved bow. Near him, a Hyrcanian, already holding his bow, knocked the top from a clay crock. Within, coals glowed dully, hissing
Oh,
from the
unipolar
spray that
magnets,
fell
I'll need
inside the
those.
container. A few quick puffs fanned them to crackling flame, and into that fire Conan thrust an arrow. The cloth tied to it burst into flame. In one swift motion, the big Sumerian turned, knocked, drew, and released. The fire arrow flew straight up to the galley, lodging in a mast. His was the signal. A shower of fire arrows followed, peppering the galley. Conan fired again and again as the two ships drew closer.
Well, hang on.
The
These
galley tried
factories are
veer
set to
away.
produce
Foam Dancer
things.
gave chase. On the galley,
Oh, yeah.
men rushed with buckets of sand to extinguish points
But this
of flame.
one's set to produce.
But two blossomed for each that died.
Ah, is that because it's like
Handles of
hidden
fire snaked up
recipes?
tarred ropes, and a great square sail was suddenly aflame.
Let me just
The
double check.
conflagration whipped by shrieking wind. "Closer!" Conan called to Mukhtar. "Close under the stern!" The bull-necked man muttered, but Foam Dancer curved away from her pursuit, crossing the galley's wake a short spear throw from its stern. Hastily, Conan
It doesn't
tapped the pot
state
of
what
coals,
these.
nudging it into the oilskin bag with ginger respect for its blistering heat. Once the sack whirled about his head,
No.
twice, and then it arced toward the galley, dropping to its deck unnoticed
Nothing
by men
specified.
frantically cutting away the flaming sail. "The oil!" Conan shouted, even as the sack fell. He seized
Wow.
another jar, this with its
I
lid sealed in place
assume
with pitch,
You're
and
supposed
threw
to
it
just
smash
manually
aboard the galley.
say, look,
"Quickly, before the distance
build
widens!"
one of
More
these for
sealed pots
me.
flew toward the other vessel. Half fell into tossing
Then
water, but the rest landed on the galley's stern. The two
build
ships
that.
converged, but now the galley's burning sail was over the side, and her men were turning to Foam Dancer.
Build one of these.
Conan pounded his fist on the rail. "Where is it?" he muttered. "Why has
And
nothing?"
then
Flame exploded in the stern of the galley as spreading
build
oil
that.
blast reached the coals that had burned out of the sack.
And then what would the
Screams
fifth thing
rose
be?
from the galley, and wild cheers from the men of Foam Dancer. In that instant, the rains came at last. A solid
don't know
sheet
what
of
the
water
fifth
that
item
cut off
is.
all vision of the other ship. Wind that had howled now raged like a mad beast, and Mukhtar's vessel reeled to the hammer blows of waves that towered above her mast. "Keep us sailing north!" Conan shouted. He had to put his mouth close to Mukhtar's ear to be heard even so.
No,
Striking
not
with the
sure.
steering oar, the bearded man shook his head.
Huh.
"You do not sail a storm of the Villa yet," he bellowed. "You survive it!" And then the wind rose, ripping away even shouted words as they left the mouth, and talk was impossible.
I think the rest of it, that's
The
it.
wind did not abate.
I'm
Nor
gonna
did
have
the
to.
furious wave.
I'm gonna have to figure out what this does, but I think this might be onto a winner. I mean, I do have another design, which is make everything from raw. So this one, I'll actually do it. And you put it up here. So I could go ahead and put that there then.
Flight mode.
Alright. Well, let's set it to building as much as it can whilst I go and excuse me.
Materials.
Right. I'll go and check.
Grey mountains of water, their peaks whipped to violent white spray, hurled themselves at Foam Dancer, as if the gods themselves, angered by her name, would prove that she could not dance with their displeasure. Those who had dared to pit this cockleshell against the unleashed might of the villa yet could do naught but cling and wait. After an endless age, the rains began to slacken, and at last were gone. The wind that flogged choppy waves to whitecaps became no more than stiff, and whipped away the clouds to reveal a bright gibbous moon hung in a black velvet sky, its pale light half-changing day for night. There was neither sight nor hint of the galley. The fire consumed it, Sharrock gloated, or the storm. Perhaps, Conan answered doubtfully. And the fire had not been well caught, the storm would have extinguished it. And if Foam Dancer could ride that tempest, then the galley, if well handled, could have too. To Mukhtar, who had returned the steering oar to the steersman, he said, "Find the coast. We must find how far we've gone astray." "By dawn," the bearded man announced confidently. He seemed to feel that the battle with the sea had been his alone. The victory had put even more swagger into his walk. Yasbet, approaching, laid a hand on Conan's arm. "I must speak with you," she said softly. "And I with you," he replied grimly. "What in Mitra's name did you mean by—" But she was walking away, motioning for him to follow, stepping carefully among the night-shrouded shapes of men who had collapsed where they stood from exhaustion. Growling fearsome oaths under his breath, Conan stalked after her. She disappeared into the pale shadow of her sagging tent, its fabric hanging low from the pounding of the storm.
Right. Let's see if I can build this before the oven's done.
For lack of headroom. "Why did you leave where I put you?" he demanded, "and how? Ain't that not too firm for your fingers to pick? You could have been killed, you fool wench. And you told me you'd stay there, promised it." She faced his anger, if not calmly, at least unflinchingly.
Insufficient
"Indeed,
materials.
your fingers wove a strong knot, but the sharp blade you gave me cut it nicely. As to why, you have taught me to defend myself. How could I do that, lashed like a bundle for the laundress? And I did not promise. I said I would be waiting for you when the battle was done. Did I not better that? I came to find you." "I remember a promise," he thundered, "and you broke it." Disconcertingly, she smiled and said quietly, "Your cloak is wet through." Delicate fingers unfastened the bronze pin that held the garment, and soft arms snaked about his neck as she pushed the cloak from his shoulders. Sensuous lips brushed the line of his jaw, his ear.
Particle accelerators.
"Stop that," he growled, pushing her away. "You'll not distract me from my purpose. Had I switched a hand, you would think yourself better off in your Amma's grasp." With an exasperated sigh, she leaned on one arm, frowning at him. "But you have no
And then for
switch,"
some
she
reason,
said.
we'll have
As he
some
stared in amazement, she
Matrix
undid the
labs in
laces of her
here.
jerkin and drew it over her head. Full, rounded breasts swung
Oh
free,
no,
showing
look
satin
at this.
flesh that dried
It's
his
another
throat.
incomplete... Well, what the hell's this supposed to be? What's that
"Your
doing?
hand is hard and your arm strong. I have no doubt it will suffice for your purpose, did you call it?"
Flight mode.
Boots and trousers joined the jerkin. Twisting on her knees to face away from him, she pressed her face to the deck. Conan
Insufficient
swallowed hard.
materials.
Those lush buttocks of honeyed ivory would have brought sweat to the face of a statue. And he was all too painfully aware at that moment that he was flesh and blood. "Cover yourself, girl," he said hoarsely, "and stop this game. 'Tis dangerous, for I am no girl's toy. And I play no game, she said, kneeling erect again, her knees touching his. She made no move toward her garments.
Alright. I don't remember this sort of titillation first time I read
am
Conan the Barbarian.
Your leman. Her cheeks pinkened. That, more than her nudity, made him groan and squeeze his eyes shut. A brief look of triumph flitted across her face. Have I not complained to you before, she said fiercely, about protecting me when I did not want to be protected? Unclenching white-knuckled fists, he pulled her to him. She gasped as she was crushed against his chest. The toying is done, wench, he growled. Say go and I will go, but if you do not... He toppled them both to the deck, her softness a cushion under him, his agate blue eyes gazing into hers with unblinking intensity.
You know what? They keep mentioning agate, so I'm going to have a look. Agate.
Stay. She wore a triumphant smile.
That's an interesting sort of blue.
Conan thought it strange, that smile.
Okay.
He was indeed
Yeah,
alone.
that's a nice shade of
His
blue.
mind did not long remain on smiles.
I mean, some of these look like
17.
lapis lazuli. Some of them have purple
On a rocky
striations.
headland covered with twisted, stunted scrub, waves crashing at its base, Conan peered inland, watching for Timur's return. The nomad had claimed that he would have horses for them all in 3 or 4 turns of the glass. But he had left at dawn, and the sun sat low in its journey toward the western horizon. On a short stretch of muddy sand, north of the headland, Foam Dancer lay drawn up, heeling over slightly on her keel. An anchor had been carried up the beach to dunes covered with tall, sparse brown grass, its long cable holding the vessel against the waves that tugged at her stern. Cooking fires dotted the sand between the ship and the dunes. Yazbet's tent had been pitched well away from the blankets of the Hyrcanians and the sailors, scattered among their piles of driftwood. As
There we
Conan
go.
turned back to his
That's nice and
scanning,
easy.
a plume of dust
Right, so
rose
now if I have a look at
and
this,
caught his eye.
is it doing everything I want?
The horses, or it could be who? He wished he knew more about this land. At least the sentry he had sat atop the highest of the dunes could see the dust too. He glanced in that direction and bit back an oath. The man was gone. The dust was closer, horses plain at its base. Tamur, or some other. Making an effort to appear casual, he walked up the headland to where a steep downward slope led to the beach, dotted with wind-sculpted trees, their gnarled roots barely finding a grip in the rocky soil. Between the dunes and the plain lay thickets of such growth. He half slid down that slope, still making an effort to show no haste. At the fires, he leaned over Akiba, who sat cross-legged before a fire, holding his sword. Horsemen approach, he said quietly. I know not if it is Tamura or others, but the sentry is nowhere to be seen. Stiffening, the Turanian slid his honing stone into his pouch and his curved blade into its scabbard. He had removed his distinctive tunic and spiral helmet, for the Turanian army was little loved on this side of the villa yet. I will take a walk in the dunes. You can see to matters here? Conan nodded, and Akiba, taking up a spade as if
So I
answering
do
a call of nature,
those.
strolled toward the dunes. Yazbet, Conan called, and she
Those
appeared at the back
producing.
of her tent. He motioned her to come to him. She made a great show of buckling on her sword belt and
wants
adjusting its
those.
fit on her hips before making her way slowly across the sand. As soon as she was in arm's reach of him, he grabbed her shoulders and firmly sat her down in the protection of a large driftwood bowl. Stay there, he said when she made to rise. Turning to the others, scattered among the campfires, he said, as quietly as he could and still be heard, None of you move. Some turned their faces to him curiously, and Mukhtar got to his feet. I said don't move, Conan snapped. Such was the tone of command in his voice that the bearded captain obeyed. Conan went on quickly. Horsemen will be here any moment. I know not who. Be still. The Hyrcanian drew back the hand he had stretched
Right.
forth for his bow.
So that's all
and
the,
Silver had risen with a look of running on
yeah,
his
there's
face
no special
rose.
minerals here, it's just the common ones.
Besides this, the sentry has disappeared. Someone may be watching us. Choose your place of cover, and when I give the word, not yet, seize your weapons and be ready. Now. In an instant, the beach seemed to become deserted as men rolled behind piles of driftwood. Conan snatched a bow and quiver and dropped behind the bowl with Yazbet. He raised himself enough to barely look over it, searching the dunes. Why did you see to my safety before telling the others? Yazbet demanded crossly.
Right,
All my life
that's
I
the
have been
oven
wrapped in
done,
swaddling. I will be coddled no longer.
and I
Are you
think
the hero in a
this
saga, then?
this thing here
The drumming of hooves
will
he
build
heard.
everything I need.
Ambrose Nine Hells was Akiba.
One hopes.
Are you impervious to
All right.
steel and proof against arrows?
I think I've concluded my
Heroine, she
experiment
replied,
now.
I will be a heroine, not
Cool.
a hero. Conan
Alright,
snorted.
thanks for joining me.
So
Just a
sigh
short
for
one.
telling
Gonna
over
have
a
dinner
fire on a
now.
cold night, or
Plus
for
I got a-
entertaining children. But
Hang
we are
on.
made of flesh and blood.
Conan, be quiet. Plus I got a bit of a headache. So, no thinking for me, thank